working first because I have had the case of when I tried testing a live stream and there was no audio when I did it from my phone. So, I don't know. I don't know. Hopefully I have audio. Let me see. It's pulling up on my computer now. So now I can find out. Okay, yep. I'm saying words and I'm saying things. Welcome to me reading Hawaii Part 2 inspired literature and such. Yellow, Two Bones, and Mushrooms. So, as many know, I have been obsessed with Hawaii Part 2 for a while. Like 5 years now. And today is an important day for Hawaii Part 2, being Hawaii Part 2's 13th birthday. So, I have been meaning to dig into a lot of the different inspirations and things noted for Hawaii Part 2, and so I was like, well, I guess today I could start off by reading a tale from the secrets and mysteries of Hawaii, A Call to the Soul, which is, unfortunately not a good book. I mean, I'm sure some people, are maybe enthralled by it, but the story of this goes is, Joe was scouring through a bookstore while at a friend's, book signing, and he saw this. It was like, okay, Hawaii, and he kind of skimmed through it, and the lore behind the stellated octahedron, Stella Octangula, Stella Octangula, um, is that he saw it in this book and thought it was cool. So, logically you're like, all right, so this book must have, relevance. Um, but you'd think like, oh, maybe it's like about different like stories about Hawaii. It's pretty much entirely a guy's ramblings about how he believes Hawaii like unlocks the secrets of the universe, which is interesting. But the thing is, it's kind of presented as if it's going to be like a cohesive book, or maybe a collection of stories, or maybe like a gathering of um influences, but it's just more of a lot of this guy talking about conspiracy theory things and not providing any sources for a lot of crazy claims that he has about how Hawaii is the answer to everything. Um and like I I don't know, man. The guy evidently really cares about Hawaii, but a lot of his comments about women makes me uncomfortable, and I also don't really have any respect for him to be like, you know, Native Hawaiians should not be mad about people coming to their islands. They should be sharing their islands because their islands hold the secrets of the universe. Like, I think he has some pretty weird takes for a non-native to Hawaii. And so just kind of beginning with that context, Joe says it's a very weird book. And I must say, it is just it's weird. There's kind of this legend at the beginning that has relevancy, I think, to Hawaii Part 2. But the problem is, for my searching, I also am not extremely educated on the intricacies of the history of Hawaii and local legends and stories. So I don't know, like, there's no source for this legend that he gives. So I don't know if he entirely made it up or he heard it, like, from other people and mashed it together. Um, but if you kind of just decide it's just a strange fictional story loosely based around Hawaii, like, I think it's interesting. I feel like I've been rambling about it. I don't like this book very much. And yeah, it's sure something, you know, like, I'm like, this guy has talked about a lot of, like, having to deal with PTSD in this book, and Hawaii helping him with that, and all these, like, crazy things helping him with that, and, like, that's great, and, like, e evidently, you know, he cares about Hawaii, the people involved in Hawaii Part 2 care about Hawaii, but it's also, like, I don't know, it's just this book has weird vibes to me, but the legend that is in it, I believe is very much tied to the Stella Octangula shape, as well as what I feel like a connection to Black Rainbows. It is also chapter 2, part 2. Actually, there is even a section of this book that is labeled part 2. Um, Let me see if I can locate it. But yeah, again, I don't recommend this book, so I'm just going to read it, like the part that is relevant, so that way you don't have to. Um, oh man, where's the part 2, you know? Someone says, Joe wasn't lying when he said the book isn't good. Yeah, it's like, there's like a few interesting things in it, which I can see can kind of, you know, really add to building up your own story for a cryptic album, but yeah, he's correct in that it is a very weird book. Yeah, so look, it says part 2. That's crazy. If you do wish to obtain a copy of this book, I would recommend a website called biblio.com. It's an Amazon alternative for bookstores, where you can buy used books, and I think that, if anything, would be a place to get it if you want, because then you barely pay anything, and you support a local bookstore. So that would be my recommendation. That's where I got this. Anyways, I've been yapping long enough. Um, I realize I probably should have looked up in advance how to say some of these words. Um, let me do that right now, actually, because I fear I may butcher this. Let's see. I wonder if I can, like, pull up on the side how to pronounce some of these things. Pronunciation. All right. How to pronounce. Well, let's see how accurate this website is.
Huna.
Huna, okay. And I will refer to that on the side. Anyways, I am going to read this legend from this weird book and suspend disbelief, and perhaps as I read you will also see some of the connections which I have made to the album. All right. How We Lost the Way, a Hawaiian legend. Paradise Lost, The Fall from Grace. Long, long ago, after the density and separation, but before time was given its meaning, there existed the kingdom of Lemur, held in legend and folklore as the world over Mu. Let me make sure I am saying that right as well. I mean, the problem is what my brain thinks is probably inaccurate. Oh, interesting. Mu is part of the alphabet, the Hawaiian alphabet. Or also destructive insects that eat wood, cloth. Alright, that is Okay, for some reason I cannot find pronunciation upon this, but I believe the pronunciation is Mu, and if I am wrong, I apologize. Anyways, we shall continue. Hawaiian legend says that their islands of paradise are the tip of that continent. If the history called mankind were an inch on a yardstick, the time legend known as Atlantis would show up about 6 inches before that, somewhat overlapping the rest of the measurement, framing Lemura. Before that was a land called Pan. Remnants of this legend exist throughout Greek mythology, the legends of King Arthur and Merlin, and the great myth bringer, Walt Disney's Peter the Pan. Quick tangent, the author in this book, I do find it very entertaining that a lot of creatives of the time of in like the 80s and 90s he refers to as like very like visionaries and prophets, so like Walt Disney, George Lucas, Steven Spielberg. He's had a religious experience with these guys. Anyways, back to the story. Although the creature spirits of Pan prevailed and intermingled, although the creature spirits of Pan prevailed and intermingled with the culture of Lemura, it is the latter that is the interest of this work. People then had the constant spirit connection with the god force of the universe. A god link, TM, and it has a trademark on it. The god force, or sorry, the god link, TM, that has eluded humankind since. They describe this relationship accurately by naming themselves the children of God's promise, the rainbow. The god force that permeated all life was called Huna, the invisible life essence. Stewards of this force were called kahunas, ambassadors of the essence. This time before time was a heaven on earth. The children of the Most High God lived as though immortal, without concern or disease. Once upon that time, in fact, when time was given its meaning, the children of the rainbow began to lose their connection. It happened one day around sunset, while they were playing one of the games of life. So, as I can see in the comments, we got connected rainbows. There's a rainbow in here. So, we gotta see. As mentioned, I definitely feel like there is Black Rainbow's connection here. So, I continue. No one really knows how it happened, only that it had to do with taking the game too seriously. For a while, the children had used a silly concept called darkness in an effort to contrast the boundaries of their joy, which was limitless before that time. This came after the notion of an angry storm, but far before the sillier notion of good guys and bad guys. The only actual offense committed by the children was in forgetting that it was a game to begin with, and therein began the serious and far reaching consequences. Still being children playing games, they were unaware of the disastrous effects that could result in crossing a small, thin line. A line that separated innocence from ignorance. Several other things happened during this time of game playing. Certain of these children, because of their aptitudes, were made stewards of pieces of their wisdom. In a forgetful mood, no one quite remembered why. One such kahuna child one day withheld his wisdom when it was needed. Others emulated the silly game, as children are known to do, like little monkeys. Finding that game distasteful, the rest of the children ignored them, unaware that this ignorance was still a form of playing the game. No one realized that the brilliant rainbow above their heads had begun to fade. Proportionately, a strange and eerie feeling began to seed itself in their little tummies, just below the navel. No one noticed the passion dwindling in their game playing. The rainbow was the most beautiful phenomenon in their garden playground. Bridging the two basic play worlds, its brilliance was more real than anything in their denser reality. The rainbow was also dependable and normally followed the children through each twilight and into the night. They were curious, as all children are, and always exploring the endless variety of life. They very much enjoyed this game called learning from the great library they knew as their Earth Mother. Perhaps this is why the rainbow was taken for granted, even though it was the most vivid of their realities. Quick note, it's a rainbow during the night. A rainbow during the night, just like Hawaii Part 2. I would point to my album art, except I taken my Hawaii Part 2 vinyl to listen to it on vinyl, so it's not there, but just imagine it is, so that I'm pointing to it, be like, it's a rainbow reference, the rainbow at night. Alright, where was I? Oh yes. The rainbow was at the center of all their earlier games. Its substance could be physically traveled upon to other worlds and dimensions. The rainbow inverted itself at night into a mirror, which was a source of wonderment and magic, and all the time the children looked forward to most of all. In its mirror, the children were able to play and dance with all of their ancestors, feeling the reassurance of departed loved ones and hearing their wonderful stories and legends. Here, in the wonder of magical nightfall, the games of the day were cleansed away so that way fresh ones could be started anew on the morrow. Got a rainbow. We got a mirror. The fountain of infinite mirror, even. And the night was created for this mirroring, for strengthening their connection, and for remembering. It also served to contrast and complement the sometimes blinding daylight. Through the night, they would feel the deeper love of their ancestors and their maker, and rest in the comfort of immortality. The night always brought rest. Then, one night, something was different. The children knew it. It had started earlier that day, during one of their games. It was the first time they paid any attention to that funny, uncomfortable feeling inside. They still eagerly awaited the god/goddess. I need to look up her name. And also it is almost 12:12 here, actually. I might need to get that screenshot, So, Pacific time zone. Get ready for 12:12 in the chat. Pronunciation. Again, I should have looked these things up before I started reading, but I forgot. Okay. Alright. It is Hawaii time. I gotta get my screenshot. Teehee. Oh man, I missed the 12:12 by just a mark. But it's alright. I mean, the 12 seconds, that is. I still got it overall. Anyways, side tangent. Happy Hawaii Day, everyone. Alright.
Hina in Hawaiian.
Hina. Okay. Laka Hina. They still eagerly awaited the god/goddess Laka Hina to usher in the night rainbow. But something wasn't right. In the 11th hour, a murmur rippled through the crowd of little upturned faces. Deep swallows produced a moment of silence, and the funny feeling flooded their being, defining itself as something they had never felt before: fear. It was almost unbearable. Desperately, they cuddled together, searching the skies. Lakahina, the moon goddess, the moon, made her sojourn across the sky in silence. But this time, there was no rainbow. The connection had been severed. The unbearable fear engulfed them, plagued by their moans of sadness. The sounds of their own moans rippled throughout the desperate gathering. They survived the night until morning, realizing somehow they had caused what happened. For the first time, they felt bad. So it's interesting. We have the moon goddess involved here. So we got rainbows. We got a night rainbow. We got the moon. We've got a mirror. I love Hawaii Part 2, guys. I love being normal. Okay, for the first time, they felt bad. The crisp morning air was permeated with an icy silence. It echoed as shudders throughout their being, and almost to the bottom of their souls, as something that had never haunted them before. From then on, that feeling was known as abandonment. That day, a new game began in Paradise, based upon the fear of coming nightfall. For the first time, many children were out sick. The rumor was stomach problems. The rest of the children, except for a few, showed up with their tummy aches and played the game anyway, but this time with a new role: victim. Some kahunas, the one who created the problem by becoming too full of self, pretended something else and played a different game this time. Feeling bad about what they had done, they pretended to hide their fear and acted as though they still had the connection that had been lost. Maybe it was a noble gesture. Maybe it was a noble gesture, and maybe not. They had met before the games and whispered at the far edge of the garden. They surmised that their playmates were hurting, and it had been their responsibility to help. Besides, what they had done didn't warrant all the wreckage and concern. After all, they were only innocent children, or so they told each other. They would have been all right, except for one thing. They had lied. Legend speaks of this gathering at the edge of the garden as the moment the severing was irrecon- irreconcilable. I can read words, guys. Reconcilable, irreconcilable, and set in stone. It is said that the first club was formed at this meeting. They named this club Better Than the Others, and the word secret took on a permanent new meaning. Before this time of separation, the game word secret was used to surprise and delight. It was here when it became a tool of destruction, used for manipulation and control that would erode all attempts to heal the severed connection. Do you remember Connected Rainbows? The meeting at the edge of the garden was marked by a little black cloud that continued to hover over such meeting thereafter. A black cloud that could be felt, but seldom seen. Games continued to grow in lies and distortion as fear and separation snowballed and grew larger each night. As they played the eerie new game based on withholding information, the kahunas began to notice within themselves a strange remnant of the ecstasy which was once their connection. It wasn't the same, they agreed in whispers at the edge of the garden, but it was something, and was all that was left. The cloud above their meetings grew darker and more sinister each morning as they met to control the games of the day. This ghost of ecstasy within the kahunas would increase every time one of their playmates, thinking that the kahuna still had the connection, would ask for help. The feeling increased further when they discovered that they could force their playmates to do things. They called that feeling power, but it wasn't. It was the opposite. So farewell to the person who has to go to sleep. I hope this has been a nice bedtime story. um all right. Because of this severed connection, the feeling of power became like a drug, exciting the dark kahunas. The addiction grew. The helpless became enslaved. Then the power hungry began to fight among themselves. An old game word that used to be harmless became infected with a new meaning. The word was competition. One night, while most of the children were waiting in agony for the dawn to drown themselves once more in a game, a new word was formed out of the desperation and fear of separation. Fostered by the drug power and the fighting and misery of the night, this most dreaded of all words came into being. That word was murder. Murder. In the in the in the morning, the rest of the children banded together and rioted, casting the power-hungry children, most of the kahunas, out of the garden. Other words were formed amidst the turmoil and based upon the obscene. The greatest of these went unnoticed at first. It would become known throughout time as the perpetrator of wars and misery and the falsehoods of God. Contracted from fear and layered in denial, the word became known as self-righteousness. And so, with deep sadness, the offenders and suspects were all cast upon the water in small boats that had been made in their earlier game playing. Some of the big black children, and the red-haired, green and blue-eyed ones willingly left with great courage on a quest to find the lost connection. The red-haired, green and blue-eyed looked to the seven sister stars for guidance. All were cast in several directions to Tahiti, which meant alone or away from. They left in a flood of tears, as gut-wrenching as their first night of knowing abandonment, taking with them pieces of the wisdom. Although the key remained with those who stayed, the original teaching split into three factions. Around the world, they would later be known as the Three Orders of Wisdom. A time of numbness and complacency followed in paradise, which then became the new definition for peace and quiet. Then a huge storm hit, followed by great earthquakes. The entire continent of their garden home began to sink into the ocean. The remaining children washed up on the shores of now separate islands, the mountain tops that were once their beloved continent of Storms had happened whenever the bad new words were used, but nothing had ever happened to this magnitude. They survived. Think sorry, I'm distracted by the comment that says Among Us is canon to the Hawaii Part 2 lore. I agree. I agree. Um Saucily says this for real sounds like the role play worlds I made when I was younger. Again, I struggled to find the source of which the author comes with this legend. Again, I just might not know, I just am not fully knowledgeable upon Hawaiian mythology. But I'm also like, I just feel like maybe this guy's role playing. I feel like a lot of this book could be interpreted as him role playing. I don't know. Anyways, to continue. The children, too wrapped up in the fear of surviving these storms, had never connected them with the power of the words that were the denial of their own life force. They didn't realize their connection in helping to cause the storms, let alone the great earthquakes. They forgot that they had peace of mind when it was connected to peace in the garden. That knowledge had been severed also. When they realized they had been spared, they found they were able to travel back and forth between the tops of the mountains that remained of their beautiful garden. Faith became the memory of the connection to God, who became more and more unknowable. A question formed in the place of where the connection once stood within them. Connected rainbows. Connection. Was the loving God they once knew now a God of anger? Since the time when the connection had been severed, there were only pale rainbows in what remained of paradise. They existed almost like memories and could no longer be touched. In fact, they ran away every time the children tried to ride them. Before the separation, there was only one rule to live by in paradise. The rule was to treat others as you would like to have yourself be treated. Because of the despicable new word, murder, a different set of rules was instilled, all of them based upon denial. From that day, the children began to describe their entire world in untruths. They began to base their guidelines for living and playing on what they no longer wanted. Typhoons, hurricanes, and earthquakes became commonplace. The legend says that then grew the roots of the Kapu system, which meant the rules of the forbidden. They thought they were correcting what had happened so it wouldn't happen again. In reality, they had begun playing the same game of separation they had blamed on the other outcast children. Also, I will have just the side tangent. One of the things I have noticed in this book is the occasional lack of sentence variation and grammar. Um, I had spotted a singular typo. I read probably about halfway through the book. This is the only part that like goes over, a legend or anything. But um, once again, it's just this book slightly infuriates me in some ways. But we're continuing. We still got a bit more to go on this legend, so then you can see more of what I'm talking about. But it's a lot longer to read out loud than in my brain. All right. A wall of fear slowly in and around. A wall of fear crept slowly in and around the remaining moments of joy, enveloping them from underneath. They began, for the first time, to age and die. As solace for their sadness, they continued their games, but with an added element, drudgery. For almost an eternity, joy became buried as play turned into work. For the outcasts, work had already turned into survival. The memory of joy, like the rainbow, faded until nothing was left except for a glimmer, locked away in the legends and fairy tales of what was. This most powerful of all words, joy, which was the connection itself, became shackled by another new and sad word called hope. Um, Real quick, I just have to notice, like, I just have to point out how long this paragraph that was on this page, it started on this page and then it's going down here. Um, I don't think it should be allowed to do that. Anyways, uh, instead of at the beginning of all games, joy was then placed at the end as a reward for drudgery, and then finally at the end of their lives. This most prized divine birthright was then labeled as a goal to be. Holy moly, $10. Thank you, Space Owl. I appreciate it. Um, Emma Audible win. LOL, XD. Okay. Anyways, Thank you. Um, I got totally sidetracked from what I was saying. The word being was discarded and replaced with another word, becoming. Joy was rarely ever even glimpsed from that time on. Because of what had happened, the physical expression of joy, known as ecstasy, was pushed down into denial. Ecstasy was a fountain of creativity within the children. It was the current of their link with God, their God link. Their denial pushed it physically down below their little navels and compressed it into guilt. The games became meaningless and the bodies atrophied somewhat, unable to connect to the full current of their God link, TM, any longer. Out of this time came the order of the God Lano. I probably butchered that. As means for survival. It was an order of cold logic where all warmth and compassion was forbidden because of the fear of feeling. From this, another legend was born that someday joy would return and the connection would be healed. Do you remember Connected Rainbows? For centuries and centuries, there was nothing much to do but weather storms and labor to produce the food that the storms had ruined. It was not fun, and what was left of paradise became a prison of doing time as life ticked away. Still, in all, it was the closest thing to paradise on earth. Unknown to the children of the rainbow, around the world their lost brothers and sisters were still alive. Boredom for them had been replaced with the games of conquer, survival, and the eternal quest to regain the severed connection. Then one day in paradise, a boy on scout duty, high on a cliff, spotted something on the western horizon. The sound of a conch shell rippling over the villages brought mixed feelings of terror and excitement. It was an unsettling feeling for the children, but it was great to feel alive again. A small envoy from the biggest boat they had. A small envoy. Oh my gosh. A small envoy from the biggest boat they had ever seen came ashore, led by a tall, ominous figure dressed in white. He pointed to a star that said he was named after, insinuated that his birth name had to do with greatness. Rumors spread of the great ghost who wore the color of death. Other rumors questioned why he would name himself after a star. When rumors spoke of the other meaning for his name having to do with clouds in the underworld, they were stifled as being impolite. He was the first adult that the children, even the old and wrinkled ones, had ever met. He acted friendly enough, or so it seemed, and asked many questions with a thick, hard accent. Because of their giving nature and their longing, the children welcomed him wherever he went. But something just wasn't quite right. Throughout the centuries, as the children of the rainbow had spread out to all the peaks of called Hawaii, the tribe had adopted a color of their beloved rainbow as its own. Each color reflected the nature, weather, and energy of their island and their relationship with it. They did this specifically to cherish each band or frequency of the color until the time came that legend said the lost connection to the rainbow and God would return. This is where it's starting to get back to black rainbows. I feel like there's a bunch of yapping in between, but this is the part where I'm like, okay, I feel like there is a potential connection going on here. Mixing all physical colors together, one tribe prided themselves on wearing black. They liked the excitement of the elements and nested on the stormy windward side of their island, claiming to be closest to the connection and the returning. In an effort to heal their great loss, they liked to think themselves more powerful. But legends say they only create what they created remained only in their minds. The others considered them frisky and humored them in the creativity of their game. Accents had become noticeable with the different tribes, and theirs was the thickest. This black-clothed tribe was the most upset by seeing the tall visitor dressed in white. My goodness, I feel like I need to take a break from trying to read. But the thing that I find interesting is in Black Rainbows. There's the chanting in the back, and that's going through different colors of the rainbow, in Hawaiian, and then black is repeated twice. And it's seven different colors, including black. That's seven different colors. There's seven tribes going here, seven islands of Hawaii, seven stars mentioned earlier in this book, seven space station level 7. That was what I was meaning to say. Um, yeah. Anyways, that part I thought was interesting of there being specifically those different colors. Why I think there's kind of a little bit of an inspiration going on here. After the strange visitor departed, stories about him spread from campfire to campfire. Since many had actually touched him and survived, the ghost stories helped them through their now dark and endless nights. Still, most of the stories were not nice. Prevalent in the stories was that the man in white had avoided eye contact. Those who held his gaze said there was something hauntingly familiar and sinister about it. His shallow, stern little beady eyes masked deep hurt, said the chiefess of the purple tribe. Never before had they beheld eyes without warmth. It was an important factor that could not be overlooked. Curdled their blood, kindling ghost stories around the campfire for years. This added excitement to the long days that now existed in paradise. The occasional visits back and forth increased between the brothers and sisters of each island, bringing back a little variety to the boredom that paradise had become. One day the conch sounded again. The other conches sounded continually. The children rushed to every shore to behold a spectacle as never seen before. The entire horizon was blood red with painted boats. A wave of fear carried the message throughout the islands. As the armada approached, a larger boat was seen leading the rest. Standing on the bow was the great ghost of all their stories. Big warriors stormed the shore furiously, attacking the children. Sheer panic swept over them as all of their fears and terrors suddenly possessed them, magnetizing this horrible event. The last remnant of their innocence was butchered, as a river of blood soaked all of the beaches. The most horrible of all words that had not been spoken for centuries begat another word: war! Although totally defenseless now, the children of paradise fought back, to no avail. This horrible word spread throughout all of the islands, except one. Alright, there's another word I need to try looking up. I feel like I could try saying it, but again, sometimes how my brain reads words and how they're actually pronounced are vastly different. So, let me check real quick. Okay, so it is the name of one of the islands, and I just do not know how to pronounce it.
Molokai.
Molokai. Alright, Molokai is the name of one of the islands of Hawaii, and that is how you say it. And then the other word, so Molokai. Oop, I spelled that wrong. The other word is. Wow, that's spelled differently than. I. It's not pulling up that this word has a. I will do my best. When these ruthless warriors tried to attack the island of Molokai, they were met on the shore by the smallest of tribes called the Manahuna. Of all the tribes throughout the mountain peaks of Mu, they had remained the closest to what they had been. Because of the heart connection of their island, they had remembered something that the others had forgotten. Perhaps it was in the childlike reverence that had remained in the remnants of their games. Perhaps it was because in despair of their loss they had let go of anger. Or perhaps it was because they could still hear the distant echo from the place within. The place next to the breath, the quiet place between heartbeats where legends said the severing had occurred. Nevertheless, they were already waiting when the warriors arrived. 3 times the sea was filled with the red assault upon the island Molokai. 3 times the assault failed. Legends since that time from the mighty warriors say the Monhunas were quietly singing when they stormed the beaches. It was said that the tone of their songs caused the warriors' angry spears to arch, miss their mark, and fall short. When the warriors charged forward with their bodies, it is said the song grew louder and the warriors lost their breath, grasped their throats, and fell to their knees. In those nights, in the midst of all the horrible bloodshed, more legends were formed among us, formed around the campfires, legends of the little people and the magic of the island never conquered. After this devastating slaughter and enslavement on the rest of the islands, the great white ghost enforced a forbidden system of rules, calling himself the Edict of God and adding many more rules, all of them punishable by death. His story, from then on known as the word his story, ha, began covering up the rest of the truths that existed since the severing and separation. Some of the magic remained, most of it black. None of it had near the power it once possessed. The ghost created a royal bloodline, known from that day forward as the Angry Warrior God. Mana, or power, was based on male domination and size. Things got worse. It's still going. Again, this is a lot longer when I try reading out loud compared to when I'm just reading it. All right. At the height of their frenzied addiction to power, the returned kahunas began to sacrifice their own kind. They attempted this first as a last-ditch effort to re-establish the lost connection. They called this the supreme sacrifice. It eventually manifested as total defiance of the Most High Father, Mother, God of love. Human sacrifice was the crudest and most despicable display of all the effects of the drug called power. All the while this was going on, others turned their heads. They had forgotten this was a form of permission and participation in the slaughter of innocents. Feeling powerless to do anything, they now felt a strange sense of security and being dominated. Surely, this security was the trust they had felt in the nights before the separation. Centuries of forgetfulness had buried their ability to realize their silence was a surrendering of their own real power and a support for these unspeakable acts. As a result, future generations were born with the guilt of these acts in their cellular memory, which is a bonkers statement to say, in my opinion. Um, I don't know. Again, I get annoyed with this book quite easily, but I'm trying to immerse myself in this magical, mystical world and whatever is going on, but it's just like the author will throw in like these random things throughout the book, even as he's explaining his life experiences, and all of the crazy visions he's had at Hawaii and things. It's just random sentences like that. Like it's their memories are embedded in their cellular memory. Okay. Is any the rest of this kind of I feel like at this point it might just be like going on with I feel like the beginning part with the rainbow and the different tribes. Um but now it's I'm just gonna skim this TBH. I'm pretty I feel like I covered the parts that I thought were interesting and if there's anything like there's only a few pages left. Um but it's kind of I guess the author's point is like, oh, how we lost the way of Hawaiian legend, how everything went wrong. But yeah, a lot of the children of the rainbow were killed or enslaved or sacrificing people. Um, and then there were strangers, and then they were. Um, um, yeah, I'm kind of my brain is kind of checked out from this book again. It talks about the children of the rainbow dying of a mysterious plague brought by strangers. And that it it killed many of them. Um, oh, there's a little bit where it's where the children of the rainbow would fall in love, but then they would be imprisoned on outposts of other islands. Many died trying to swim the treacherous waves to get back to their loved ones. Those who survived are put to work again building useless walls. Um, and then it's just the last of the people who treasured this golden age went underground. Da da da. The partial ability to see the future and the remnant of their legends promised that this future would mark the return of a golden age, the return of joy and the healing of a rainbow connection. And it's like capitalized. It is a rainbow connection with God. Again, like the Muppets movie, I believe would have been out by that point. Like this guy like idolizes, George Lucas and things. Like I feel like that's kind of intentional. It's just like one of those quirks where it's like Is that what you are intending to reference? Same with why I don't know, like, Godlink has a TM after it. Like, did he trademark this himself? Um, anyways. The return of joy and the healing of the rainbow connection with God. Some of this legend was captured on tapa cloth, the first Hawaiian paper, in the last century, and never translated into English to this day. Again, like a statement like that, then how do you know what this means if it's never been translated? All right, sir. These legends, passed down by word of mouth for over 800 generations, as well as the legends from around the world of their lost brothers and sisters, all say that the time of prophecy is now. And so, the point the author then proceeds to make is that, this was published in the year 1995. We are in the golden age. UFOs are showing up, and there's going to be a portal that opens over Hawaii, and like it's going to connect us back to the rainbow and all of the dimensions of the universe. And the stellated octahedron, Stella Octangula, is mentioned in here, that the whole point is that, like, all of these crazy different things, like the pyramids of Egypt and the volcanoes in Hawaii, and I guess there's something where it's like connected to Mars too. I don't know. Either way, the author claims that this study unravels everything from ancient myth to UFOs, and that he who understands this symbol may unlock the mysteries of the universe. And then they don't really go into further detail after that. But that's where the stellated octahedron came from. Was from this book, which again is why I have gone through the effort of reading through most of it slash skimming it. But again, I feel like the only part that like really has any relevance to Hawaii Part 2 is this beginning part of the legend. But I think it was just kind of like, you know, this is just a shape. It's not it's not exclusive to conspiracy theorists, and it has totally been overridden by, Hawaii Part 2 fans. Like if someone sees this, they are going to think Hawaii Part 2. The other thing too, it's like on the vinyl, this is placed inside the like in the moon, and then in this legend, there's a moon goddess who brings the rainbow. There's the moon, and then there's the rainbow on the album cover. And then there's the seven different colors, which or the seven different tribes, which are the seven different colors chanted in black rainbows. Talks about connected rainbows. And so I think there's some of the influence from here, even if it's just a really weird book. It's just something that you can like kind of stare at it like a strange specimen under a microscope. Um, but yeah, again, it's very strange. This guy makes a lot of very outstanding claims. But considering the fact that the turn of the century did not usher in this era of UFOs and dimensional portals over Hawaii, um, I think it's safe to say that he was just saying things for an entire book with run-on sentences and occasional typos and missing grammar. But this misinformation came straight from his soul. It was not AI, and that is the beautiful thing of it being from the 90s. Is it was not AI generated. I can say that much. That is the positive of this book's weirdness. It was not AI generated. But yeah, but that's the idea of this, is there being this connection, connected rainbows. This is connecting all of the things together. Um, and things like mentioned, like, oh, there's mirror and stuff. But yeah, anyways, that's all I want to say about this book. I plan to dig into next The Lady by the Sea, which is sampled in The Mind Electric. So, all of these things are tangentially related or mentioned in reference to Hawaii Part 2 in some way. And The Lady by the Sea, I've kind of skimmed through summaries of it before, but the interesting aspect of that is it is about this woman who falls in love with a sailor. The sailor murders his captain and is like, ah, shoot, I gotta go run. So then she waits for the sailor, but he doesn't return, so she ends up getting, like, married and continuing on with her life, but everyone thinks she's a little, a little odd. She's also the daughter of a lighthouse keeper. I mean, she's a grown woman by this point, but it's not that you stop becoming a daughter. I don't know why I specified that. Anyways, um, so the Lady by the Sea is just very interesting because, you know, murders, captains, sailors, lighthouses. So, there is an audio drama recording version of it on LibriVox, which is like free to use, which is why it was sampled in the Mind Electric, and so like kind of with the popular interpretations of Hawaii Part 2, it's like very, very interesting that there's these themes, and so I wish to do that. I'm not going to do it today though. I still have some things to finish up, as this is my last day of the semester, and I have robotics night. But I hope you at least found something intriguing about this book, and if you ever wondered what was in this book, I hope that helped answer. Um, and even though I despise this book and wish to throw it against the wall for most of the time, as mentioned, you could find it used somewhere if you so wish. Um, Someone had mentioned that they found a used version of this book where it had like a note from like the author's roommate giving it to someone. So if you buy it used because it is, like, I'm guessing this was a small author. I'm really guessing that this wasn't like a huge thing in the 90s, but I don't know. Um, but yeah, biblio.com is where I got this. Um, get it used, get it for a few bucks. Maybe you get cool annotations in it, but yeah, if you're so interested. But I feel like I lucked out on this version because there's different versions of the album color, but this one has like the rainbow on it and Hawaii, so like Hawaii Part 2, Hawaii Part 2. But yeah, thank you for listening. And again, whenever I have time to yap more, I will continue with digging into these different Hawaii Part 2 inspirations and connections because there's a lot of them. I have made a list, and I will make my way through that list as time permits. But we'll just see when I have time to do anything again. So farewell for now. And thank you again for listening. Happy Hawaii Part 2 today. And for those who are amazing Digital Circus fans, good luck. Thank you. And farewell. I will stop streaming.